Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1065A, and today's date is September 2nd, 2016, and the title of the episode is Central Banks Are Now Practicing Backdoor Monetization. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we realize that the IMF, the World Bank, the central banks around the world, they are not working for the people. They are working for themselves. We have to remember their product is debt. And we understand that the IMF continually comes out with their prediction on how the global economy is going to be doing. But something very interesting that we should note is that the IMF is never right. Because the IMF continually downgrades its global growth forecast each year. Now, the beginning of each year, they come out with a forecast, and they never increase it. They usually downgrade it because they're overestimating what the world economy is doing to give people hope, to make it seem like they're doing a wonderful job. But we already know in the beginning that the economies are failing. Now, the IMF's World Economic Outlook, it's due early October, and it is expected to signal the sixth consecutive downward revision in 18 months. Now, here we are once again, where they continually tell us in the beginning of each year that things are going to be fine. And of course, they're going to tell us, in the year of 2017, in the year of 2018, we're going to see, 4 or 5% GDP. It's going to be incredible. And then we get to those years, and what happens? They have to downgrade them. And we've been seeing this quite often. We also see that the IMF is not going to participate in the Greek bailout. Now, there's a problem in Greece. We know there's a huge effort in privatization. We know the banks are buying up their natural resources for pennies on the dollar. They're implementing austerity on the people. They're doing everything the central bank wants. The problem is there's too much debt. And what happens if there's too much debt and the country cannot pay it back? The country collapses. Well, the central bankers really don't want that. It doesn't help them in that way. They want to keep the country hanging on. It's almost like a drug addict. You don't want them to die because there go your sales of the drug. You want them to hang on. So you don't want to give them too much. You want to give them just enough to ask for some more. So right now, Greece has too much debt. The IMF realizes this. And what they want to do is remove some of the debt so they can give them some more. And this is what they wanted from the beginning, because they realize that many of the countries, they have too much debt. And if they don't do something, countries will start to collapse on their own, and they cannot have this happen. And we can see that the economies around the world, they are getting worse and worse as time goes on. Caterpillar, as we know, their sales are absolutely awful. They're worse than the Great Recession. They're going to be laying off 2,000 workers in Belgium. Here in the United States, they've come out with the unemployment numbers. And the BLS reported that in the month of August, there were about 151,000 jobs that were added. Now, they thought it was going to be at about 180,000. So they're missing about 30,000 jobs from their expectations. And we know a lot of these jobs, I would say the majority of them, they are part-time jobs. So the unemployment rate remained at 4.9%. They expected it to come down to 4.8%. So I can see already the next month, we're most likely going to see a huge drop in unemployment to help the elections, to convince everyone that the economy is doing very, very well. The labor force participation rate, well, that remained flat at 62.8%. And the number of people not in the labor force increased by 58,000 people. Now, if you really look at this, the U.S. labor market stalled by nearly 50%. And when we look at the jobs, we see the jobs went to minimum wage, food service, and drink places, leisure, hospitality. And we see right now that there were 34,000 jobs that were added to these industries, even though we have evidence of increasing layoffs by restaurants across the country. Education and health, well, they added around 39,000 jobs, and the high-paying jobs, they declined. Manufacturing, construction, mining, we've lost 14,000, 6,000, and 4,000 jobs. We see a steep drop in temporary jobs. They have declined by 3,000 in August. So what we're seeing right now, since 2014, the U.S. has added 523,000 waiters and bartenders, and we have lost 13,000 manufacturing jobs. Again, we have a problem. We have a huge problem. And the situation is getting worse and worse as time goes on. We see the National Association of Credit Managers, economist Chris Kuehl, said overall, it was fun while it lasted. The trends had been up, and now they are not. The best that can be said about the decline is that it was bad and hasn't got much worse. The sales collapse is consistent with what has been appearing in the Purchasing Managers Index and other statistics, so it is unlikely to be an anomaly, not good timing as far as the retail community is concerned. And when we look at this, what we're seeing is that small businesses are being hit. We see small businesses are defaulting. Now, according to PayNet, borrowing by the U.S. small businesses sank in July. Firms are late at repaying existing loans, and trends are pointing down. And we're not seeing economic growth headed our way at all. Companies are struggling right now to pay existing debts. Loans more than 30 days rose in July by 1.63%, the fourth straight monthly increase, and the highest delinquency rate since December of 2012. So when we look at this, we have to say to ourselves, let's see, unemployment is declining. It's really not going anywhere. Even the manipulated unemployment, they can't make it look good. Small businesses, retail, they're having trouble paying back their loans. Sales aren't there. Caterpillar shows us that it's having a very difficult time. They have declining sales that are worse than the Great Recession in 2008. When we look at manufacturing, we see things are rapidly falling apart. New York ISM, well, that has crashed back to contraction. We had July, where we had this surge from 45.4 to 60.7. Well, it's been entirely erased. Purchases, revenues, expected future demand, they're all tumbling. And then we look at U.S. factory orders. They have declined year over year, every month since October of 2014. This is the longest period in U.S. history since 1956 that we've seen this. And it has always indicated the U.S. economy is in a recession. U.S. capital goods shipments, they have collapsed to 9.4% year on year. I mean, it just gets worse and worse as time goes on. And the central bankers, the governments that are intertwined with the central banks, they realize they're running out of ammunition. How can we keep this system propped up? Well, one way they're doing this is this secret backdoor monetization of its own securities. The ECB's QE program, well, it is implemented through several national central banks, like Germany's Bundesbank and Spain's Banco de España. National central banks buy bonds according to rules set by the ECB. The problem is that these constraints narrow the stock of debt the banks can buy from. These rules prevent the purchase of too much debt from any one country and stop the central banks from buying debt with steeply negative yields. So here's an example. German's Bundesbank bought 209 billion euro in sovereign bonds between March and July. It also sold off 43 billion euros of this debt. Those securities are then back on the market to be bought, potentially helping the central banks to work around the program's restrictions. This suggests that one of the ways that the QE has been implemented, especially in the countries where scarcity may be an issue, is that the National Central Bank is essentially buying bonds from itself, or perhaps even from other national central banks in the euro system. So they're just passing them back and forth. It's amazing what they're doing to manipulate the system to make everyone believe that this is okay. And we know the Bank of Japan, they had to take this a step further. They had to start buying stocks where they're looking to nationalize the stock market. Well, the ECB right now, they might be doing the same thing as the Bank of Japan, where they're going to buy equities as part of their expanded stimulus program. So we have the central bank doing everything in the economy. They're buying the bonds, they're passing them back and forth to each other, they're buying all the stocks, the equities, and the people, they're all sitting on the sidelines. But there's always one problem. They can keep doing this. But just like the subprime securities, the people will eventually show and tell the true story of what the economy is doing. Because when the people stop purchasing in the retail market, when the people stop purchasing homes, when the people stop purchasing stocks, and it's only the central bank in there doing everything, and the rest of the economy continually falls apart, like we're seeing, where we're seeing manufacturing, retail, unemployment continually getting worse and worse, there will come a point where it doesn't matter if the stock market is at 90,000. Because if you have 300 million people out of work, and corporations that are declaring bankruptcy, and corporations, small businesses that are delinquent on the existing loans because nothing's happening, that's the end game. That's it. They can't stop that part. And this is why they're rushing against the clock, because they realize they can only prop this up for so long before the system comes down. And they don't want it to come down on its own. They want to control it. They want to have a story about how it came down. They need the blame. And this is what they've been preparing for. And this is why they've been holding on for such a long time, to get this story straight, to be prepared and ready for what is coming. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.